but just to top off, hit the, as Alexandria Cortez would say, hit the tippy tops of his accomplishments. He is an associate professor of law at the South Texas College of Law in Houston, specializing in constitutional law, the United States Supreme Court, and the intersection of law and technology. He's also the author, and maybe this is the first time I ever heard about you. You wrote the book Unprecedented, The Constitutional Challenge to Obamacare. That was in 2013. He has subsequently written a book in 2016 called Unraveled, Obamacare, Religious Liberty, and Executive Power. He was selected by Forbes magazine for the 30 Under 30 in Law and Policy. He's twice testified before the House Judiciary Committee on the constitutionality of executive action on immigration and health care. He's an adjunct scholar at the Cato Institute. He's the founder and the president of Harlan Institute. He's the founder of Fantasy SCOTUS, the Internet's premier Supreme Court fantasy league. So if you've got any young people, they can get on with that and learn how the Supreme Court really works and they get to be on it themselves. He blogs at joshblackman.com. He's the author of 4 dozen law review articles. 4 dozen, look at his age. I mean, good grief, that's pretty impressive. The former president, we couldn't even find one of his law review articles. His commentary has appeared in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, USA Today, LA Times, other national publications. Don't I read you a national review?
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. Anyway, impressive young man. He has a lot to say. He's going to start off and talking about free speech and so forth. There will be a Q&A time, and here you go. Without further ado.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. Thank you all so much. Let's talk about free speech today. Okay? How many of you have kids in K through 12? Okay? Or have had. How many have kids in college? And I'm guessing a lot of your kids maybe are conservative. Is that a fair guess? Do they ever feel afraid to perhaps speak up their voices in school? This is a problem, and it's a fairly common problem, where campuses are predominantly made up of professors left of center. And students in all grades who may not fit into the orthodoxies of their own campus might feel afraid to raise their views. Now, I frankly don't care. I say whatever I want, and I do it across the country. And that gets me in trouble sometimes. And that's actually why you invited me to come talk to you. Last year, I was invited to give a speech at a law school in Queens, in Long Island City, which is actually the district of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. It's actually her home district. I didn't even know who she was back then, but this was her district. And the students invited me to talk about free speech on campus. And they tried to find a professor who might be willing to debate me on it. No luck. No, they won't touch me. They won't even go near me. So no big deal. I give this talk over and over again. A couple days before the event, the president of the club that invited me says, "Josh, they're forming a protest against you." And I'm like, a protest? I didn't actually believe him. I thought he was making it up, or that maybe these kids were just gonna do a prank or something. So I didn't actually believe him. Okay. So I get to campus the next day, and the student comes up and says, "Josh, there are about 40 or 50 people in the hallway outside the classroom protesting. They actually, I'm not joking, you'll see the video in a minute, they actually distributed poster board and magic markers to make signs to protest me. They had arts and crafts time in law school. They were trying to put out poster board and markers to protest me. Okay, whatever. But then it got a little real. The school security officer, who was plain clothes, came over to me and he said, there's a fairly big protest. I said, okay. And he said, "I'd like to escort you into the room." I'm like, okay. And then he asked me a question, which I had never considered before. He said, "What is your exit plan?" My what? "How do you plan to leave the building?" I was like, oh. So I said, "I'll take an Uber." He says, Good, you're not taking the subway. Oh, okay. At that moment, it became real. Now, I don't have a problem with people protesting me. It's their right to speak just the same way it's my right to speak. I was a little worried, though, about violence, physical violence, which is a non-trivial concern. So I want to play this video. I don't know how well the audio is going to sound because I have this mic, but I'm going to play this clip. And let's see. Okay. So. Yeah. So here's the setup, right? It's gonna be hard to hear. Not the best way is we'll make it work. So here's me. I'm walking down the hallway from the elevator, and in a second, they're going to see 50 protesters shouting at me. They're going to be shouting, "Shame on you." They're going to be shouting, "You're a fascist. You're a racist. You're a sexist. You're a homophobe. You're a transphobe. You're an ableist." That's going to be disabilities. They use every name in the book. Every name in the book. So this will be hard to hear, but I'll try my best with this. It's hard to hear. I think
Your legal analysis is lazy.
that's the sign I agree with, actually, that was my favorite sign. It says, you can't see it, says your legal analysis is lazy and wrong, which I kind of agree with. This one is expletive. This one says, conservative hate does not equal intellectual debate. So let me just pause it for a minute. These people had never met me. They had never heard me speak. But they simply presumed, based on my politics and who I am, that I was a hateful person and that I wasn't welcome on their campus. And they came out and protested. Now, I actually don't have a problem with people shouting at me, holding up signs. Now, it was a little intimidating, but I'm a big boy, I can handle it, right? You shouldn't be afraid of people's hurl names at you, no big deal. But they were trying to send a message that I wasn't welcome on their campus. So now, all these people are outside, and I walk into the room. And there's like 4 people in the room. Maybe 50 people protesting outside, but there's no one inside the room. They didn't actually want to hear me speak at all. But let me tell you something, this is important. The reason why that room was empty was because students, conservative students, were afraid. They did not want to be seen with me. They told me this. They came up after everything was over. And they said, "We are afraid of being seen with you." And they were not willing to even hear me speak. They came in later when everything kind of quieted down. Okay, so, yeah, 5 people in the room was like, okay, no big deal. So, I'm walking in, coming into the classroom, and here it is fine. They're saying, "Shame on you, shame on you." No one's there. But then the event takes a different turn. The protesters came into the classroom, and they had a plan. They were going to surround all 4 corners of the room, and they were going to stand right behind me. They come right inches away from me. Now, right? It's a little intimidating when someone is literally standing over your shoulder because you can't see them, right? You have no idea what they're going to say. Now, my students were standing as close to this podium as to me. That's where they were standing, a few inches behind me. I knew very well that security people couldn't do anything. They were in the back of the room. These guys were on my shoulder. If the situation turned violent, there was nothing they could do, right? My father, when he saw this video, said, "You will never do this ever again." you're going to run away. But I told him, you have to stand up, or people leave him. You cannot get into that. That's what they wanted. They wanted me to get scared and run away. I wasn't going to do that. They wanted me to back off. I wasn't going to do that either. They wanted me to start yelling at them and screaming at them. I wasn't going to do that either. Instead, I did nothing. I let them get their energy out. I let them protest. I let them scream at me. But I wasn't going to let them run away.
Let me fast forward just a little bit. I don't get an entire clip.
So at this point, about 4 minutes in, I haven't really said anything at all. Just with a sign. Conservative debate does not equal intellectual debate. Josh Blackman is not welcome here. They assume basically that. So I decided, here's my strategy. Let them get all their energy out, and then I'm going to start talking to them. I'm going to start to engage with them. I'm going to ask them questions. Let's see how they actually handle an intellectual discourse. They could. I'll ruin the ending, right? They started asking them questions, and you're not going to hear it. But I wanted to see how they fared. And when you have to sort of collective hive mind, they're not able to. So I started asking questions, I started talking to them, and they didn't know what to do with it. Now, at one point, I'm not going to play, it's a little vulgar, but at one point, I started talking about the importance of the law. And a law student, you know what I'm saying, right? You want to say it?
Are y'all big girls? I mean, it's a 4-letter word. It's naughty.
What did she say?
She said, "Fuck the law."
Say it.
F the law.
Fuck the law. I was talking about the importance of the rule of law, and a law student screams out, "Fuck the law."
Yeah.
These are law students.
Yeah.
Law students who, in another year, will sit for the bar exam, and in 10 years, will be judges, and maybe run for Congress, I don't know, right? This petrifies me, that their legal education was so deficient that their only way to respond to an argument was by screaming, "Fuck the law." That was all they had. And after a while, they left. They left. They left. They couldn't handle it. I think they're tired. You know, you're a 5-year-old. And they left. They fled the room. They couldn't handle it. And I think this teaches some important lessons for all of you. All they can do is call you names, racist, sexist, whatever name in the book they have, they'll call you that name. But if you engage them and actually talk to them, they fall apart, and their immaturity comes out very quickly. And you can shine a light on how vapid, how empty their slogans are. And look, after the protesters left, there were maybe 5 students who stayed in the room. You know what I did? I took questions and answers for an hour, an entire hour, on every topic you can imagine, on criminal justice, on abortion, on slavery, whatever they want to ask me these questions. And I showed them that you can have a right-of-center scholar who can engage you respectfully and not throw bombs at you and not act like a neuter child. I was not the caricature they were expecting. They were expecting things very different. And if you show people that, you're so much more effective. And in the end, let me fast forward to the end. The room's full. After the protest, after the children left, other people want to learn, people hear what I have to say. And let me tell you a story about this guy, right? It's kind of bad. His name was Andrew. He held up a sign the entire time and said, "Josh Blackman. Josh Blackman is an oppressor. I'm an oppressor." If you feel pressed right now, you don't have to do. And he listened to me talk for a good hour. He sent me an email, gave my card. He sent me an email that evening, and he basically apologized. Not quite. He said, "I don't think you're an oppressor anymore." Imagine that, right? You actually hear a person talk and you change your opinion of what they think, rather than just prejudging them, putting these signs with magic markers and glitter and felt and, pipe, whatever else they were doing, and that's the protesting. But I think there's positive, right? I think there's still some glimmers of hope, but the initial reaction of the students who protested and tried to shout me down to go away, I think is problematic. They want to protest outside, it's fine. They don't like me, that's fine. They have to let me speak. Because if you let me speak, you might like what you hear. Thank you very much. I will take as many questions we have, and there are a lot of them. Maybe I'll talk a little more. Thank you so much.
One of the questions I have is, what you just said is that we have, this is the law school that allowed this protest, allowed them to disrupt your speech. They're obviously not teaching good law, because here you have a law student saying that she wanted to, the law.
Yeah.
And you're right, I mean, that's a prestigious law school. And I know other people who are going currently to I've heard about the University of Texas Law School and other, they're all going left, left, left. How do we fight that? I mean, what can we do? I don't know what to do.
Right, so the question here is, what can we do, right? What can be done about sort of leftward drift? And I think there are a couple of things. Now, I take it most of you are coming out of school, but you have kids. And one thing I would instill in your kids, your children all ages, is a courage to know that they shouldn't be intimidated by this. And let me explain what I mean. There's a very easy temptation for students to say, "I'm going to keep my mouth shut because I don't want this to impact my grades. I'm going to keep my mouth shut because I don't want to lose a reference letter from a professor. Or I want to keep my mouth shut because I don't want to lose friends." And I think that's dangerous, right? We're never going to change the faculty of the university. It's not going to happen. I think no matter how much you try, it's not going to work. But having a vocal presence on campus that can push back and reject these ideas, and students who have to put their names to their ideas, not just on Facebook. Facebook is nice, but in person, right? If there's an invited speaker, go up and ask them a tough question, right? If there's professors who are misbehaving in class, they can fuss about it. There are ways to use your small presence on campus to really shine a light on it. I don't think it's feasible to change the bureaucratic infrastructure of universities. This is pretty well enmeshed. You're not going to change that. But from your own kid's perspective, don't be mean, all right? If you take a hit on your grade, then I didn't work. Easy for me to say, I don't give you a grade. But the professor's willing to dock you in a grade because of your political views, and that's a very, very, very bad professor.
So how would you rate your own law school?
South Texas is a unique place. It's not very political. And I think the reason why is most people go here to get jobs. I know it sounds silly, but people who go to South Texas are looking to become career lawyers. They're not looking to become the next, champion of social justice. That's not the culture. We have a top-ranked advocacy program, we have a top-ranked court program. Our kids want to become judges and prosecutors and district attorneys. I've never had this issue with my. I'm very happy at South Texas. I don't have to deal with this stuff that you have at other schools. We've had speakers come on campus and there's no protest. They come, they go. If you don't want to hear them, stay in class, go home, go read a book. Yes.
Can you speak on some things that are going on in the Supreme Court right now?
Do my best.
Yes.
What would you like me to talk about?
Well, aren't there some things, I can't remember, there's a couple of big issues that are up there right now. And it was an article that was just talking about, it was going to finally give our new judges an opportunity to show how conservative they are. Yes, that's the gist I got from them.
Yeah, sure. So the big Supreme Court change is we have
community members, right? You'll probably recall that Justice Scalia, blessed memory, he passed away almost 2 years ago. I'm sorry, almost 3 years ago. February 2016, so almost 3 years ago. He was in West Texas at the time. As you know, President Obama nominated Merrick Garland to fill the seat. The Senate Republicans didn't consider him. They said, we're not going to fill the seat till after the election. President Trump won the election. They promptly nominated Neil Gorsuch of Colorado to fill the space, and are pretty happy with the Gorsuch nomination. And then last June, Justice Anthony Kennedy, who's been in the court for 3 decades, hung it up. He retired. And President Trump nominated Brett Kavanaugh from D.C. to fill the seat. The Kavanaugh nomination went on and on and on. There's lots of stuff that happened there, and eventually he was confirmed. Now, we haven't had too many big tests for how the new judges will fare. I think one thing you keep your mind on is the Chief Justice. Chief Justice was a George W. Bush appointee, John Roberts, and some years ago he voted to call the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. And the fear now is that John Roberts might become the new sweetie pope. Dare I say that anymore, right? That he may take over the place that Anthony Kennedy once held. That whenever there's a case that goes left or right, John Roberts will decide which way it is. You know, I don't know if that's going to be the case, but it looks like we're heading there. Republicans, I think, will be one or 50% with judges, and one good, one bad for every Republican president. Now, W. Bush had Justice Alito, and then John Roberts. So we'll see what happens. But we'll probably have some very big cases, not this year, but next year, involving abortion, involving DACA, the Deferred Action Program, case involving Obamacare. We have a big case involving the census that's coming up this term, whether the government aspect of citizenship status in the census. There are a lot of very big issues that will come up. In fact, we talked earlier about the President's Wall Declaration. That very well may come to the Supreme Court next year. All this decided in June of 2020, right on the eve of the next presidential election. So we arrived, hang on.
I wonder that one about the big cross.
Yes, well, I'll mention that one. So the Supreme Court heard argument in a case about a week ago, recently, from Maryland. After World War I, town in Maryland erected this 40-foot stone cross. It's huge, 40 feet tall. And it was built in commemoration of those in the area who died in the Great War, the First World War. Now that cross has been there for about 90-something years, and no one really complained until recently, an atheist group challenged the cross. They argue that that's an establishment religion, and that should be torn down or moved. Although the cross is so old, to even move it would probably destroy it. You can't even move the damn thing. It's pretty old. We had arguments on about a week ago. From my vantage point, I think the cross stays. Don't quite know what the court will say about it. I don't think the cross is going to be going anywhere. Yes, ma'am.
You said earlier about security, that they weren't going to do anything about all the kids in the room. Why can't the security do anything? And if they can't legally, can you hire a policeman to come in? Or can anybody, National Guard, whatever, to so that you can speak, so anybody can speak?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I couldn't hear it, I'll repeat it. School wasn't going to start arresting the kids, they weren't going to start removing them. So the question was, what about security? I don't think I ever done private security course. I haven't thought of that. It's a good thought. So let me put it this way. If they were just standing in the back there, I really wouldn't have a problem. I don't have a problem if they're standing right over my shoulder, behind me, where I can't see them. Now, I wasn't intimidated, like I should have been, but I wasn't afraid. Now, if the event got a little more hostile, thank you, a little more hostile, that could have gone violent quickly, and that could have been hostile pretty quick. I don't know what the right answer is. I think it'd be problematic if schools start arresting people in the event hall. you have to basically drag them out. I think that would create a bigger protest than if I were to just give it natural. Unfortunately, I think the only way to deal with this is after the fact. Discipline after the fact. But let me tell you, none of these kids were disciplined. There was zero discipline handed out, none. The school did nothing to handle this. Now the students know if they want to shut down an event in the future, they got a playbook. They know exactly what to do. Thank you for the question. My dad was scared out of mine. He said, "We're never going back." I love you. I'm going to do it again. Yes, ma'am.
Back to the police report, FISA. So, Justice Roberts is over the FISA court. Is that correct?
He appoints the judges to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Board.
Okay. So there's a lot of information out about the FISAs that were done in order to spy on the Trump campaign. So can you speak to that as far as maybe like what his knowledge might be or involvement or?
I get this question a lot. There's a fairly robust theories about John Roberts and the FISA court. I first heard this one back in 2012, where someone asked me at some event whether John Roberts was being blackmailed to vote for Obamacare, and I think it was FISA. I don't think the Chief Justice has any involvement with the FISA process. He points to the judges, that is. To the extent that anyone misbehaved with the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Warrant, people in the DOJ, it's not the Chief Justice. Thank you for the question. Yes, ma'am. Okay, I'm going to ask you both questions. The first one is the likelihood that Roe v. Wade would return, and the second question was about the President Trump's emergency wall. So, let me tell you something. You may not know this. You won't hear this from Katy. Roe v. Wade is no longer actually good law. Okay? Roe was decided in 1973, a long time ago. Roe said that you have these trimesters. In the first trimester, you can't ban anything, and the second trimester, you can ban some stuff, and the third trimester, you can ban whatever you want. That was the law for about 20 years, until 1991. The Supreme Court decided a case called Planned Parenthood versus Casey from Pennsylvania. And Casey basically changed everything. They got rid of the trimester framework. Instead, they drew the line of viability. Before viability, you want to have certain burdens. After viability, you can ban whatever you want. Of course, the question is, when is viability, right? And that changes based on science. As neonatal care increases, different ages survive at different ages. So the first part of the question, will Roe get returned? It's basically returned already. Roe is not the good law. The relevant question is, when will Casey get returned? I think it's unlikely that will happen. And I don't think the court needs to. I think it's far likely the court just chips away at Casey and say, well, okay, you can't do this, but you can do that, right? You can't ban abortion in X weeks, you can ban it X plus 1, whatever it happens to be. I think the court can do that more effectively than overturning the case. Again, I don't think John Roberts has any appetite to overturn a fairly important case. I think they can maybe chip away. Now, the second question concerns the emergency declaration and the wall. Now, let me just give away some background. Back in the 70s, Congress enacted a law that basically told the president, if you decide that there's an emergency and you declare an emergency, you can then spend other pots of money. Now, Congress didn't actually say what an emergency is. They gave almost full discretion to the president to say what that emergency is. Now, maybe that's not just a good idea, maybe it's a bad idea, but that's the law we have in the books now. There's a lot of discretion to decide if there's in fact an emergency. President Trump's decision to invoke the emergency, I don't think will be challenged. There's not enough specifications, not enough limits in the law. So I think the emergency declaration will probably hold up. The bigger question is whether you can then use that emergency to fund wall construction. And that is actually a tougher question because it depends on whether you need the military to do it, whether there's certain types of threats. I think on balance, that's what I told Michael Berry about a couple weeks ago. I think on balance, the president probably wins this one, but it's very hard to say. What I will make a point, though, is that building the wall will take a lot of time. You can't construct things overnight. If he loses the election, none of this will matter. It's just the next president is canceled. So basically, in order for any of this to make any difference, I think the president will be reelected. And if he doesn't win the election, a lot of the things that we've started with will be stopped dead in their tracks. I think it's a far more pressing obstacle in the Supreme Court to do. Thank you for the question. Yes, ma'am.
Why is it whenever there is public expression of religion, you use the word God or anything associated with God, in a public forum, the immediate response is separation of church and state, and that is not in the Constitution.
No, it's not. I mean, we all are about constitutions, right? You don't, you should. When I was in school, when most people were in school, the only thing you learned about the First Amendment was separation of church and state. That's basically all I remember. And that phrase is not in the Constitution, right? It says, Congress makes law respecting establishment of religion. And that's the key word, establishment of religion. Now, the court has actually held, in a certain context, prayer for public meetings. You can have godly trust and currency. You can hire a chaplain for legislative meetings. So there is some room for having religion in the public sphere. The Maryland Cross case mentioned a moment ago, I think the Cross is stay. If you ever go to the Texas Capitol, you will see a 6-foot tall granite Ten Commandments monument. That's still there. It's about a Supreme Court challenge. So there's some instances where you have religion in the public sphere, although there's always the lawsuits that come out whenever people aren't happy about it. Good question.
I have my pocket constitution, just saying, take your.
I'm sorry, Coach Katy? Oh, those crews. Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice. I like it.
I like too. And speaking of that, you speak and teach about religious liberty a lot, and honestly, that's one of my biggest concerns going forward with the culture in the country is the loss of our religious liberty. And a lot of what you were saying, Cynthia, speaks to that. But I mean in businesses. I saw that, the Masterpiece Cake guy in Colorado, I did see that the Colorado Commission finally woke up from their pop party and said, no, you cannot continue to harass this man. But, I mean, do you see the court speaking to any religious liberty cases? Because again, as a Christian, I have certain beliefs that I want everyone else to live their beliefs. They can do that, but don't infringe on mine. Where does that line stop anymore?
All right, so let's talk about, okay. Yeah, so let's talk about the Masterpiece Cake shop case. You may be familiar with this. You had a Christian baker in Colorado, and a gay couple asked him to make a cake for a same-sex commitment ceremony. At the time, Colorado didn't even have same-sex marriage. He said, I will make you a cake for anything else, for a birthday, for Christmas, or any other holiday, but I will not make this cake for you for a same-sex wedding. He went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court actually ruled in his favor, but on fairly narrow ground. The Supreme Court said, well, there's some evidence that the people in the Colorado government have hostility towards religion. And because there's some hostility towards religion in the government, we're going to give you an exemption. So eventually Colorado sort of let him go. But there are a lot of other cases involving bakers, florists, photographers, and I think you really have to go out of your way to find a Christian florist who will not make flowers for a same-sex wedding. I think you really have to go out of your way to find these places. So I think that the number of these decisions are actually fairly small. In a lot of these cases, the vendors, the florists, the baker, etc., they have extended a long-standing relationship with governments, but they don't provide this one service for them that they would provide otherwise. I think it's going to end there. Yeah.
It's more of an observation, and that is that we as parents, as conservative Christian parents, have a choice where we spend our money for our
Yeah, the question over there?
Yes, the bakers in Iowa, remember that case?
Which one was this?
One of the bakers in the house was married on the property in Iowa.
Yeah, there's some cases where people rent out catering halls and venues for weddings. I even saw one case involving a DJ who would DJ at a same-sex wedding. And I think these cases are there are a small number of cases that actually happen, but these vendors are getting. I think they're getting targeted with lawsuits quite a bit.
They are. But the Supreme Court is.
Well, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of one baker on fairly narrow ground. There was another case off in Florida, the court sort of punted away, so she's still in limbo. But there was a Florida one in Washington State Court. Yes, ma'am.
Is it constitutional for taxpayers to pay for military training and operations? It's a matter of contention for the Trump administration and whether taxpayers should be paying for transgender operations.
So the Supreme Court this year and next year is considering President Trump's order to exclude certain transgender people from the service. So far, the lower courts said that Trump couldn't do it. The Supreme Court sort of put that on hold. So currently, the president's transgender ban is going into effect. I think they'll probably say how those people work. Yes, over there. Yeah.
Thank you. I just have one quick question. So, I know there's academies like in Austin, because obviously you have a mentor students that like high school students can go to for a couple of weeks and kind of learn the Constitution with a more conservative bent. Have you ever been to that? And I don't remember the name of it, maybe you can remind me. And then are there others in the country too?
Well, I am the president of a nonprofit called the Harlan Institute, which I mentioned earlier. And our mission is to teach high school kids about the Supreme Court and the Constitution. We run the fantasy SCOTUS, Supreme Court Fantasy for high school kids. And if anyone wants to, I'm coming afterwards. It's an online program for high school kids to learn the Supreme Court.
So it's like a fantasy football league?
You actually write briefs and make oral arguments in pending Supreme Court cases. Very sophisticated. And we fly the top 2 teams to Washington, D.C. that actually move in front of, actually argue in front of judges. By chance, last year, Judge Kavanaugh was one of our judges, and he won the Supreme Court. We probably won't be doing it this year. We have some pretty good judges, the judges will fit.
So we can put that site on our website?
Please.
Yes,
Please.
we will.
Please.
We ought to send it out in an email so people will actually get in their email box and so they can pass it on to kids. You
Well,
know.
what would be cool is if Martha Mathis put it in her little packet for the new homes that she's trying to make.
Yes.
I have not argued with Supreme Court. No, not yet. I think one day eventually I will. But I've been there many times, yeah. It's hard to get there.
You have a question over there?
Yes, ma'am. Go right back.
Yeah.
Obviously, infanticide is obviously my most concern. It seemed that somebody, it's actually murder. I don't think anybody can disagree with what is in this room. We know that there's so many states. How are they getting around the law that they're not murdering the child when it's wrong? I know it's the law, on top of the law, but how do you get around murder? It's been one of the most evil, like evil of the world, and it always was.
It's a very, very tough question. And I think the law, think of it this way, right? If you have an elderly person who's quite ill, and the person is terminal, right? They're going to die. A doctor can't give that person lethal injection to them quickly. Some states actually do have assisted suicide laws. That's a different story. But a doctor can basically pull the plug, right, and stop providing affirmative care to the person. I think that's similar to what you're asking about. It's not about affirmatively killing. It's about not providing care so that the client takes its course. I hear your question. What's your name again?
Basically, I know the Supreme Court is doing a request
Supreme Court is inundated by requests. Lawsuits that have to cases. How do you know what some of the criteria is? Was there
Actually, a good question. Not abortion or transgender. These are easy questions. The question was, how does the Supreme Court decide what cases to take? Every year, there are thousands of cases that go to the Supreme Court. They take about 80, a very small one. So generally, the court takes a case for a few factors. One, are the lower courts in disagreement, right? Maybe Texas said one thing on an issue, and California courts said nothing, right? They like resolving these sorts of ways. They also take cases that are very contentious, controversial issues, like Bush v. Gore, right? You know, these national issues that the court has to resolve. But let me tell you something. Most of the cases the Supreme Court takes are boring, right? They involve tax, bankruptcy, contracts, things you really don't care about. Of the 80 cases the Supreme Court hears, maybe 10 or 11 will make the news that you actually care about. So there's a very small number of cases that actually matter. Unsurprisingly, most of the cases the Supreme Court are unanimous, 9-0. They agree know what past cases they made. The marital lottery case, they disagree violently, right? Those two cases are on the same page.
Great. Josh?
Thank you all so much, and I'll be right there for questions.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Impressed with your resume.
Well, thank you.
And we all hear you on Michael Berry.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
That's where we kind of hear on
Thank
Michael Berry.
Well, it was a great show.
We appreciate you.
Thank you.
And we're really excited about this SCOTUS program. We want to learn more about that
Thank you.
and get our kids involved with that. I wanted to make some announcements. I want to briefly